action, and the lights are on. Maverick has jumped the start and has a drive-through penalty, and that is the AlphaTauri you can see going very quickly through the middle of the field. Side by side now go Fairley and Slapbus. It looks like Slapbus is broke later. Fairley has the better line, maintains the lead out of turn 1 with his lovely green and black helmet there. And a little bit wide there, braking zone for turn 2, and Ross goes down the inside of the pair of them. And from Fairley's really good start, defended from Slapbus, he's now got work to do in front of him. Ross capitalising on a couple of mistakes there from Fairley and Slapbus down the inside of turn 2. Great move and great opportunism, I guess, from Ross. So he takes the lead. We've got that guy coming up from P15. He's in P11 right now. Dayman has had a bit of a poor start. Maybe tyres aren't quite working for him from the formation lap. Appy overtaking Maverick, or Greidel overtaking that guy, and Dr. Edward also following suit. Meanwhile, Ross has a 1 second lead coming through Sector 2. So Ross perhaps maybe has a bit of a wet setup on, and that may be why he didn't challenge for pole. Side by side now, Slapbus and Fairley coming through turn 13, and that could have easily ended in tears for either or both driver. And a big slide there from Fairley coming out of the final corner, and you can just see how tricky these conditions are. Maverick is into the pits for his drive-through. That will send him roughly 20 or 25 seconds back. But of course, safety car could come out, bunch the field up. He's right back in the race, so Maverick does perhaps need to hope for a safety car for some points this evening. Maybe Slapbus is coming back into this now. Fairly missing the apex to turn 1. Slapbus has to make sure that he doesn't collide with Fairley here. One bit of damage in the wet will be crucial and critical to your race. And I'm sure Ross will be kind of glad that these two are fighting again, because the more that you fight, the more you lose time. You can see Ross now 3.5 seconds in the lead. That guy is fighting his way back up the field from last after joining quali late. He's now up to P9 and only a couple of seconds behind Pete. And you can just see how difficult it is for the drivers to keep this on the straight and narrow and drive as fast as possible. Hoike has dropped back by a few seconds, so Hoike perhaps having a couple of moments in the last couple of laps right now. Would be really good if do the slick intermediates like we've seen in F1 recently at Turkey. Be really good if they had that in this game. Mr. Wiggles again, another big slide out of turn 5, and needs to be careful that he doesn't bin it. The more you slide, the more eager you get on the throttle trying to catch up to the car in front, the more at risk you put yourself putting it in a wall and ending your race early. SL O'Connor going a little bit wide there at turn 11. And that's not the first time we've said that this evening. Is starting to... I think the rain is subsiding a little bit from what we've seen over the past couple of laps. Tired egg, says Jota. Ross's tyres are done, says Ross fan. Well, doesn't look like that. AMS Fairley, a little bit of a mistake, lost a few tenths, and now Slapbus is all over the back of the Mercedes for P2. We've still got a good battle between SL O'Connor defending P5 from Mr. Wiggles and that guy, who are both within a second of the car in front. Pete is half of this race, probably with slicks on the car And here comes Slapbus into the pits. That is a very early pit stop, you might think, considering it's still raining out there. But we'll wait and see what he goes on to. I suspect it will probably be a set of the medium tyres, but it could be the set of the hard tyres. Slapbus is the first driver into the pits for slicks. And on go the mediums. Padgestic says it's too early. Well, we'll have a look. This rain is still falling, but it is getting lighter. If the rain stops right now, I reckon Slapbus might have an opportunity here at an undercut. But the questions now arise, if Hoy, Fairley and Ross think it's too soon for the slicks, they can stay out on the inters and try and capitalise on the Slapbus. Let's just go on board as Dr. Edward comes into the pits now for mediums as well. AJ Sam also into the pits, and the rain has stopped. So Slapbus here could have got this call spot on. AJ Sam into the pits for soft tyres, so we'll have to check on his progress towards the end of the race on if he's doing a one-stop or a two-stop. Mr. Wiggles, meanwhile, has been overtaken by that guy on the intermediate tyres, and in comes Fairley to the pits. Ross stays out on the intermediate tyres. Albrighter with a 3-second time penalty. Hoyke stays out too. These three of SLL Connor, that guy, and Wiggles all pitting now for slicks. And it seems like the Slapbus has really caught up with those guys on the inters. This is going to be fascinating, where Fairley is going to come out of the pits, and Slapbus has absolutely destroyed Fairley on this lap. Slapbus got the decision absolutely spot on, and he has overtaken Fairley on an undercut, and he's gained 4 seconds that lap on the Mercedes driver. And that means now Slapbus will take the lead of this race when the top two pit at the end of this lap. He's only 15 seconds off the leads. Mr. Wiggles now is all over the back of SL O'Connor, as is the Red Bull of that guy, so that guy is lost out. Trying to avoid Hoy K off the track. Mr. Wiggles overtook that guy, and now this is the battle for the final podium place. And still Ross is out on those inters, as is Hoy. No, Hoy is in the pits now. So Hoy ditching those intermediate tyres. And what does he put on in the pit stop? He puts on a new set of inters. And I tell you what, the rain is now falling. They knew more than we did. We thought it was a silly decision to stay out, but they knew more rain was coming. Potentially now, Ross could be back in the game. However, he's lost so much time in the dry conditions that even if the leaders were to pit for inters right now, I think they would still come out ahead of Ross, and Ross is on 20 lap old inter tyres. It definitely seemed the right call to pit for slicks. Slapbus leads AMS Fairley by 2.3 seconds. It is starting to rain again. Now, around the outside goes Mr. Wiggles, and he goes into third. However, with this rain now falling, traction is going to be a big question mark. Any of these drivers could lose it on the slick tyres in wet conditions. This race was poised beautifully out of qualifying inters. Finds himself in P4, but he might have a hard time defending this from Wiggles. And around the outside of turn 5, what a move that was there from the Haas driver. Very bold, very brave, and very committed indeed. That could definitely go into one of the overtakes of the week. Slapbus pits, and the gap out front has shrunk by a second. This lap, it seems like Fairley is going to overtake for the lead of the race through an undercut. It seems like Fairley has got this call absolutely spot on, and you can see on the track map there, they're going to be very close into turn 1. And it looks like Slapbus has just got out ahead of Fairley. Slapbus has just done enough, and that undercut attempt by Fairley has not quite worked, and Ross is into the pits and retires in the pits. A bit of a frustrating race there for Ross, as DRS is now disabled, which means that guy's into the pits for Inters. Also, Dr. Edward is into the pits for Inters. I expect Appy will be into the pits for Inters. In comes, the Ferrari driver. And a big slide there for Kasper Ackermann. Needs to be careful he doesn't speed into the pits, does well not to. Dayman. Wiggles and that guy need to make sure they don't get any more penalties, otherwise they may be at risk of losing out to SL O'Connor. And there is a move. The Red Bull is past Wiggles, but he's missed his braking spot. And that guy has cut the track to maintain third. We do have a category of penalty in the steward handbook saying you can't gain an advantage by going off the track. If Wiggles is aware of this, he may send that into the stewards. And that could give him P3. Oike, meanwhile, is trying to unlap himself. SL O'Connor with a 3-second time penalty, and that's critical for him. It means that he won't overtake any of these drivers on the line. And now, as we start the final lap of the race, we go on board back with the leaders. That guy has to pull a 3-second gap now on Wiggles if he wants to beat Wiggles after penalties is calculated. But we still don't know who's going to win this race. AMS Fairley has 1.5 sectors to get past the Williams, otherwise Slapbus is going to take a well-deserved win. Whoever wins out of these two, it's going to be well-deserved. Unfortunately, only one can win it. It's been an enthralling race. These two have been going back and forth throughout qualifying. And in the wet conditions, you really didn't know what was going to happen, but Slapbus now coming around the final corner, and it looks like he's done it. Again, one bit of oversteer could cost him a win, but here comes Slapbus to take the win by just 0.6 of a second. That guy struggling, and Mr. Wiggles has overtaken him on the exit of turn 11 there. Mr. Wiggles definitely using a wet setup, and you can just tell he has absolutely loved these conditions tonight. Round the final corner he comes, has less penalties than that guy, comes home to come from P9 to P3. That guy though, what a race he's had from the back of the field, P15 to P4. SL O'Connor with that time penalty would have jumped ahead of the Red Bull, but unfortunately stays P5. Dr. Edwards, again, very strong drive from him. P12 after crashing in Q2 and an early exit from qualifying, and a great result for him. He finishes P6. Pete tried desperately to gain, but that McLaren can only manage P7. I'm sure he won't be too disappointed with that. Prev coming home to finish P8, and Dayman will also cross the line very shortly to round off this race. Hoike finishing P9 of a race of what could have been if the rain was a little bit heavier or the rain carried on a little bit longer. A bad strategy call, you'd have to say. Cost him some major points and has cost him desperately in his championship lead. Hoike takes away 2 points. Fairly gains the gap by 16 points here this evening. So Hoike will have a 14-point lead going into next week's Belgian Grand Prix. And thank you, Padgestic, for that. Slapbus wins on only his second race in IIRL. That is definite congratulations. And, well, I could give driver of the day to multiple drivers. I could give it to the top two, I could give it to Wiggles, I could give it to that guy, I could give it to Dr. Edward. I really don't know who to give it to, and I'm running out of time to decide. I'm going to give a joint driver of the day to both Wiggles and that guy. They both deserved it. Also, Slapbus and Fairly deserved it, and they've been so dominant out in front. Look at that, 35 seconds they won. Oh, I could give it to all of the top four. I think I'm going to give it to Wiggles and to that guy, and extreme special mentions to the top two, and also to Dr. Edward for his drive through the field.